So at this point, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Kathi Kaiser. So Kathi has spent the last 15 years using design as a tool to pursue happiness for users, designers, as well as clients. As co-founder and partner at Centralis, she leads a top-notch team to create great user experiences for clients including Sony, Warner Brothers, LexisNexis, as well as some Chicago organizations such as the Field Museum and the Regional Transit Authority. Kathi holds a master's degree from the University of Chicago and a Bachelor of Arts from Georgetown University. And she's also an adjunct faculty member at the Illinois Institute of Technology's Institute of Design, where she teaches on usability methods. So we're really honored to have Kathi with us today. So please let's give her a warm welcome as she comes to talk to us about deconstructing happiness.
Thanks. All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much. Appreciate being here. I'm really excited to talk to you today about happiness. What a great topic. What a great topic for us as designers in particular, because I'm going to share with you some thoughts about how we as designers can make the world a happier place. What a great opportunity that is for us. But first off, it's the dreaded first session icebreaker. So let's start by talking about happiness. I'd like you to take just a very short moment to say hi to the person next to you, and in particular, share with them the one thing that made you happiest this past week. Okay, so let's just take a moment to do that.
Oh, thank you. Does anyone want to share the thing that made them happiest this past week? Any volunteers? Matt, what made you happy last week?
I would say just meeting a lot of new people because I just got to Chicago in November. Thank you. So I've been going to a lot of meetups and finding out about a lot of interesting concepts and developments that's going on in the city within, especially the startup community.
Great, great. All right, fantastic. Anyone else? What made anyone else happy this week? How about you, Sean?
So this week is Lunar New Year, and my parents are back in China visiting family, so I got to Skype with my grandpa and my aunt and uncle. It was really good.
Fantastic. Great, great. So I hope you all had fun talking about what made you happy. It certainly seemed like it. There was immediately a lot of laughter, so that's fantastic. Let me share with you what made me happy this past week. So I had the opportunity to celebrate a birthday at a tiki bar where there was lots of unfortunate hula dancing on stage by the birthday boys. And we got to pretend that we were in Hawaii and not in Chicago in February. So that made me very happy. But when I think back on my life and what makes me happy, with a capital H, I probably won't remember this night. I mean, it was a good party. But when we assess our overall happiness, we tend to think about kind of the bigger milestones. Things like getting married, maybe, or having a family. These are the things that we generally attribute our happiness to. But of course, these don't happen every day. Did anybody get married this week? Anybody have a baby? Good, I'm glad. You shouldn't be here if that was what the week was. It's those little things. I mean, we all seem to have plenty that we were happy about this past week, but it wasn't the big stuff like this that we usually, say account for our happiness. It's all those little moments. So through our time together today, I hope you keep these two levels in mind. The sort of happy with the little h, the little things that bring us joy throughout our days, and then the happy with the big H, the sort of overall impressions that we have about how our life is going. All right. So you may have noticed in talking with your colleagues that the things that made you happy were very different. And that's the great thing about it. Different things make us happy. And we are the only judge of what makes us happy. Try as we might to please other people in the world, ultimately we know what makes us happy and what doesn't. So as designers, this is kind of a vexing challenge. If we take on the mission of designing for a happier world, well, gosh, what is that? There are so many varieties. And it begs the question, can we actually do that? Can we make people happier? Is this something that we can change about the world? Or are people just people and they're going to be happy or not, regardless of anything we might do? So I'm going to spend some time today talking through this problem of, can we make people happier? And if so, because I certainly hope so, how can we go about doing that as designers? All right. The field of psychology for many, many years throughout its history really didn't pay much attention to the idea of making sort of normal, ordinary, basically happy people even happier. Their focus was more on dealing with problems, people who have mood disorders or depression, trying to get them up to baseline. And while that is a very important problem in the area of inquiry, it does beg the question of why. Why not make people who are pretty happy happier? Well, and there are a couple of reasons for that. There's this assumption that there are happy people and unhappy people, and there's really not much you can do about that. So I'm sure we all know folks who are like Tigger, who no matter what happens to them, they see the silver lining, the sunshine, they just move through life in a happy place. I certainly know people like this. We probably also know people who, no matter what happens to them, they're ready to complain about it. They see the dark side of everything. And so for a long time, it was thought that there's really not much you can do. There are happy people and unhappy people. And in fact, it might in fact be genetic, right? We know that happiness is linked to neurotransmitter activity in our brains, particularly dopamine. And the amount and level and use of dopamine in our brains is determined in part, at least by our genes. So if that's true, then there's really not much we can do about making people happier. It's just, what they come with. There was also a bias in the field around this concept of hedonic adaptation. This is the grass is always greener phenomenon. That you may think, oh, if only I had a bigger house, I would be happy. If only I had that better job that I wanted, I would be happy. If only I had those shoes, I would be happy. But then you get that thing, you have that achievement, and sure, your happiness level does get a little boost from that, a little bump up, but then you get used to it. And then it's the next thing, the bigger house, the different job, the other shoes. And this is often called the hedonic treadmill, because you get stuck on it, and you just kind of never satisfied. You're maybe, a little happier for a little while, but then you drop back down to that set point. So for these reasons, the field of psychology really didn't pay much attention to how to impact happiness, because they kind of threw up their hands and said, what's the point? Until about 20 or 30 years ago, the field of positive psychology began to emerge. And these researchers weren't satisfied with these explanations. They said, you know what? Lots of people are happy at one point in their lives and then are even happier later. There's got to be something to that. What makes that happen? So they were devoted to developing a scientific understanding of what happiness is and effective interventions for increasing it. in the world. And that could be within individuals, it can be within families, it can be within communities. The idea is that there must be a way to define this thing, happiness, and then develop strategies for making people more happy. There are lots of great books on this topic, and I'm happy to share specific references. But a nice shortcut to learning about it is this documentary, Happy, that's actually on Netflix, I was happy to discover. And it does a nice job of sort of summarizing a lot of the research. It's only an hour long, so if you're interested, check it out. All right. So the first move of these positive psychologists was to put some meat on the bones of the concept of happiness. You know, there are definitions of happiness going way back. Aristotle said it was the ultimate aim, the greatest good of, you know, human achievement. But that's not very helpful when you're trying to measure it, right? So we needed an operational definition. So first off, they began by taking the idea of happiness and casting it as subjective well-being. Because as we were saying earlier, only you can judge your level of happiness. I mean, yeah, you can have an MRI and see the dopamine levels in your brain, but only you can label that as I feel happy, right? So studies in positive psychology rely on self-reports, kind of necessarily. And what do people report? Well, the first component is frequent positive affect. In other words, feeling good a lot of the time, right? Of course, the flip side of that is infrequent negative affect. So feeling bad less of the time. And then you put those together, and you also think about high life satisfaction. So this is kind of the happy with the little h, big H that I was talking about before. The first two are the little h's. The day-to-day, what are the things that make us feel better or make us feel worse? And then the last one is the big H. How do we ultimately assess our overall happiness in life? So some researchers at the University of California, Riverside, and a couple of other institutions took on the challenge of, with this sort of definition, where does happiness come from? How can we determine what is it in our world or in our bodies or in our environment that leads to high measures of subjective well-being? And through twin studies and through longitudinal analysis and other methods, they came up with this model that's been pretty well accepted. And first off, they say that genes actually do account for a lot of our happiness. So there are Tiggers and Eeyores out there. And you basically have a set point for your happiness. And think about the people you know and yourself. You know, you have people who are, yeah, they're generally going to be happy, and then they can be moved up or down depending on what's going on in their lives. But they stay within that range. So these studies found that about 50% of our happiness can be attributed to this set point. It's kind of what we come with. But it's only 50%, right? So what's the rest of the story? Well, 10% is attributed to our circumstances. And by this we mean our kind of our global circumstances, our big picture circumstances. So whether we live in a middle-class environment in the US or whether we live in poverty in India, these circumstances have an impact on our well-being. And you might think it would be more than 10%. Actually, that doesn't sound like much. But studies have shown that people who are in kind of destitute circumstances, like for example, if their annual income is maybe $5,000 or less, they're significantly less happy than people who have an income of, say, $50,000 a year. There is a difference there. But then people who make maybe $50,000 a year don't look that much different on happiness from those who make $500,000 a year. So this 10% is about kind of basic needs. If you are in a position where you're not regularly having your basic needs met, your happiness is going to take a hit. But once you get to that level, it really doesn't have much other influence on your happiness. So what's that remaining 40% then? There's still a big chunk left. And this is what the researchers refer to as intentional activities. So if you think of the circumstances as what happens to you, intentional activities are what you do about it, right? And that might be, how you think about it in your mind, how you frame it. It might be how you choose to spend your time. Intentional activities are the millions of little things that we do every day. And it turns out that those things account for 40% of our happiness. So as designers, I think this is fantastic news. Because what this means is half of what accounts for people's happiness can be impacted by design. It means we have the opportunity to play a role in what's going on this other side of the chart here. We can create experiences that give people that boost And it turns out those little experiences account for a lot of what makes people happy. Now, of course, with great opportunity also comes great responsibility. The flip side is we have the power to make that not so happy, right? All those little interactions can also build up to negative experiences if they're not optimal. If they're not producing happiness, chances are they're detracting from it. So there's a lot that designers can do here to have an impact on people's happiness. So some of us actually have the opportunity to work on projects that directly impact this 10%, right? And some of you here may be involved in these initiatives with UX for Good, IDEO.org, Design for Good through AIGA. It's fantastic that designers in the world are starting to become involved with challenges geared towards improving people's circumstances. Okay? But most of us don't get to work on these types of challenges every day. Most of us are working on things like checkout processes and health insurance websites and financial services and work tools, when compared to some of these, social good design problems, these can start to feel kind of small. I mean, I'm sure we've all had that experience in our work. Like, really, am I going to spend all this time over this week or this month working on this small thing that only so many people are going to use, and does it really matter anyway? Yes, it does. It does. Yay! 40% of people's happiness comes from using these things. So, don't ever fall into the trap of thinking your work doesn't have an impact on people. It does. You can make them happy by doing your little part as best you can to meet their goals. All right. So back to our definition here, right? More happy feelings, fewer bad feelings. That's where designers can have an impact. And sometimes it's helpful to think about the happyometer. Thinking through what, as people move through an interaction you're designing, where are they going to fall on this? Or what you're having them experience, is it going to move them up? That's a good thing, that made me happy. Or, usability problem, it's going to go down. Studies have shown that it takes anywhere from like 3 to 5 happy experiences to outweigh 1 bad experience. So, as you're designing, as you're doing cognitive walkthroughs, as you're thinking through your overall interaction, look at the moments where happy things are happening versus where there are potential hiccups like misdirection or confusion or error messages or things like that. And always try to keep that happyometer moving towards the positive side. Okay, so our first question, can we make people happier? Yes, yay, we can. There's a lot we can do. Of course, that begs the question of how. It's no small job, right? Especially given the variety of happiness. If you think back on the things that we shared with each other about what made us happy this week, they were all over the place, I'm sure. So how do we attack this as a design challenge? Well, we're designers, and design is about problem solving. So we need to define the problem, and we need a framework for deconstructing it. So what I'm going to do now is take us through some different dimensions or parameters of happiness. But first I'm going to show you my daughter. This is my daughter. She makes me very happy. She's 14, and happiness in her world, she's got a pretty high set point, I think. She seems to be pretty happy, although she's still a young teenager, so fingers crossed we don't get cranky and difficult. But her happiness has different flavors, right? So maybe it's the exhilaration of winning a volleyball game, which is like her favorite thing ever. Or maybe it's the comfort of a lazy Sunday morning at home, although the cat does not look particularly happy. Maybe it's the pride that she feels from some achievements. Or, with any teenager, of course, maybe it's the camaraderie of hanging out with her friends, right? When you think about these different types of happiness, their characteristics are very different, right? An exhilarating experience does not feel like a comforting experience at all. There are different sort of components and characteristics. So when we think about doing, interface design, product design, service design, it's helpful to think about what is the nature of the happy experience that we're shooting for, given what it is that we're creating. So let's take a look at some dimensions. An important dimension in thinking about happiness is kind of the range from efficiency to engagement, right? And we all want to design for engagement, right? That's what you hear from the clients all the time, right? We want an engaging experience. What is that about? Well, that's where the pleasure, the happiness comes from the doing, right? I enjoy doing this. This is compelling. It's got me really focused on it, and it's going to be a great experience, the doing of it itself. There are other experiences. Maybe you don't enjoy the doing of it, but you're sure happy it's done, right? It's that joy of completion. It's like, that's over, check, got it, done. So if you're designing for these kind of experiences, you might want to think about different types of things. So a great example is e-commerce. Right? So at Centralis, we recently completed a study with expert shoppers. These were folks who take great pleasure in shopping online, more than I really ever thought was possible, actually. They describe it as a hobby, as something they do in their downtime. It's a game, it's a contest, and they're talking about things like, you know, I'm going to find the best deal, or I'm going to find the best value. It's not even that they want to spend the least, it's they want to find the product that originally cost the most and now costs the least, that difference. And looking at these things and kind of spelunking through sites and looking for deals, and great source of engagement and joy for these expert shoppers. Not all shoppers are like this, but for this group. But once they picked out what they wanted, they were done. Engagement was over. They want to check out. They want to get it done and get that thing in the mail to them. Right? Very different kinds of experiences, all within the same overall interaction. So when you think about designing for it, you might want to make the engagement side very feature-rich and, you know, lots of things to help folks compare and explore and spend a lot of time. But then when they want to check out, you don't want to put a lot of engaging features in that checkout process, right? You want to make it efficient and quick and clear so they can finish. Because both of those experiences are going to make them happy over the course of this whole interaction. Another example is the travel industry. So we do a lot of work with travel clients, and they're always fun projects to work on because who doesn't like thinking about travel, right? Ooh, vacation. And so in the shopping process for a vacation or a cruise, people tend to really gravitate towards beautiful imagery and rich descriptions of destinations and places they're going to go, and you can really get into it and imagine. It's the joy of anticipation, right? The pleasure of the trip begins when you're planning it, right? But then similarly, once you've picked out, like, I'm going to take this cruise on this dates to this, you know, destination, then there are a lot of people who are like, okay, done with the fun, looking forward to it, but let's execute the transaction. So this cruise line that we've worked with has this option, you know, you ready to choose your stateroom? Well, you know what, choose for me. There's also an option for people who want to be very specific and choose their particular room. But to support, to make happy those people who are ready to be done, there's this path where you can just say, pick me the best thing you've got. Right? So these different types of happiness aren't so much about what you're designing. It's about the moments in the course of your interaction that might call for different approaches. All right. Another dimension is predictability versus novelty. And predictability is all about knowing what's going to come, right? This is very expected. Yep, that's right. That's how these things work. And there's that comfort that comes from that. I don't have to solve this problem. I don't have to figure this out. I know how this is going to go. Versus novelty is the joy of, oh, I didn't expect that. Wow, that's so cool. I would never have thought that this would work that way or that this information was available. So a great example of predictability in design is maps. Anybody know what this map is? Look familiar? Yeah? How many people think this is the L? Yeah, looks like the L? No? Oh, I see some shaking heads. Great. This is not the L. This is a bus map. Okay, this was a study that we did for the RTA a little while ago. And the goal of this map was to help people who arrived on the L or on the Metro to find a bus at that station that went on to their final destination. It's a good goal, right? It's sort of multimodal, looking at the whole journey. But the problem is that this looked too much like train map. So participant after participant went up to it and assumed these lines were trains and made wrong decisions about how to continue their journey. So the stakes are pretty high here, right? You have expectations about how maps will work and what the information means. And if you bring those and you expect it to work a certain way and it doesn't, well, you could end up in the world of hurt. Another map example is with the work we did at the Field Museum. So this time last year, approximately, they had an exhibit on the 1893 World's Fair, kind of a fun exhibit. And they had a tour in their app that kind of gave you more information about the various objects. And so our participants were excited to check out the exhibit and use the app. And the first thing you see when you go in there is this getting started page, and there's this map. Oh, great. And there's a symbol on the map. So we had some people think, oh, that's where I am, right? I think it's a reasonable interpretation. Most were able, after a few minutes, to realize, oh, wait, no, that symbol doesn't mean where I am. That symbol means something of interest. It's a point of interest marker for a map. So that must be where the tour starts. Okay, I'm going to go to that place, and then I'll start my tour. Well, unfortunately, that place is within the Hall of Birds. The World's Fair Tour does not start within the Hall of Birds. And that's because this is an example map. Okay? Field Museum felt they were providing a service by helping explain how the maps in their app work. Nice. Totally unexpected, unpredictable. You don't expect there to be a general map, a map, you know, as an example, in something that you're trying to use. So we actually had participants go to this spot in the museum, which was kind of in a back corner, and be disappointed that the tour didn't start there. Right? So a mismatch between, you know, expecting something to be predictable, discovering it's novel, lower happiness. But that very same app did bring a lot of happiness with novelty. And for this, I have to show you a video because I can't accurately, in words, capture how happy this guy is. All right. Let's see.
Well, it tells me that I can do the discover thing. So if I want to find out about the World's Fair, anytime you see the special QR code, scan it using the discover button. Got it. So let's try that. See how it works. So we're scanning. Let's see. So I scan.
What happened?
You have got to be kidding me. No freaking way. That is absolutely amazing. You've got to be kidding me. That is so cool. So it's basically showing me, as I expected, it says what he saw. So as I turn and look around, it's showing me what, I guess, if you were at the World's Fair in 1893, what you would see. And it's amazing. It is absolutely amazing. Over here is a squid. Holy moly. Oh, whale. Oh. And then it shows the skeleton, and then it puts the flesh on it. Oh, wait a minute. What's this over here? Now that is absolutely amazing.
Okay,
now,
tell me a little bit more. You're saying a squid, and as you're moving around your body.
So as I move it around, it's literally like a GPS, and it's looking everywhere I look. Obviously, on the ceiling, it's not showing anything. The floor is not showing anything, but I don't expect it to. And as you turn, I'm trying to see what. Now I don't think it's gonna. I'm gonna move closer. I didn't expect that. Okay, that'd be a little crazy. It's still great because it shows what it was when it first opened. There's not a squid. I'm sorry. I'm so special. It's a whale. Isn't it? Right? So it shows the whale skeleton, and then in case you don't know, like me, what it then puts the flesh on it, and you see the actual. That is incredibly cool. Then it shows just a few exhibits. There's a woolly mammoth, a giant octopus. Looks like there's possibly some construction. Absolutely amazing.
This is probably the happiest participant we've ever had. If only they were all this happy. And so he didn't know what to expect when he just scanned this QR code on this stand in the middle of the main hall. And that was fine, because this was a discovery experience. He wasn't trying to accomplish a task in the moment. He was open to, well, what is this all about? And that's a great opportunity for novelty. Wow, it totally surprised him. He could not have anticipated that this would behave that way. In fact, he was actually a little wrong about some of the details of it, but it didn't matter, because it made him so happy. And this is the same app that made people very unhappy for following the map to the wrong place. So it's about the moment in the interaction and finding the right places to be novel versus predictable. All right, our final dimension is agency versus abandon. And we hear a lot about agency in design. This is where you empower users, right? I got this. I know how this works, and I can get the information I need and accomplish this task, and the feelings of happiness are about confidence and success and self-assurance. Abandon is the joy of relinquishing control. It's this, oh, you've got it. I don't have to worry about it. And these are very different ends of the spectrum. They both produce happiness, but the quality of that happiness is different. So when it comes to agency, we hear a lot about flow. I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of flow. The idea is that a flow state is when you're doing an activity that you're proficient at, but it still challenges you. It's kind of at the edge of your skill. So you can kind of continue to do it and be reinforced by it. And you kind of get in the zone, and the world goes away. And your own self-consciousness goes away as well, and you're just doing this activity. And it's important to note that flow itself isn't happiness directly, but people who are in flow states more often report more overall happiness. So this is Jamal. He's a short order cook. He's from the documentary Happy that I showed you earlier. And for him, flow is about cooking. He always has loved cooking, and he's smiling as he's flipping his omelets and cutting up his hash browns, and he just gets into this sort of zone and rhythm, and it brings him happiness. When it comes to designing interfaces, you think, well, how can we get to flow in an interface? An example that we like to use is from one of our longstanding clients, LexisNexis. This is a very, very old screenshot. This is probably 10 years old at least. And if you're familiar with the legal world at all, then you know that LexisNexis provides searchable case law, statutes, analytical materials, stuff that lawyers need to build their case and support their arguments. And once upon a time, this was the interface they used to get that information. And it's sort of the classic example of having to learn how the system thinks so that you can use it to get what you need. You had to find the right source, sort of the database, they call it source, to search, and then you could do your search on whatever your legal issue is. And this gave people a lot of anxiety. How do I know if, do I want to look in the Second Circuit or the Fourth Circuit? Do I, is this a federal issue or a state issue? Where is the thing where's my silver bullet, right? I need the best argument possible. And I need to know what the opposition is going to come up with. So I have to find what they're looking for too. And this experience of having to go into all these different sources was very challenging and led to a decrease in happiness. Over the years, we've worked with them to help create this newer version, which you can see is clearly inspired by Google, which came to its empowerment during this period. And the idea here is it flips the model on its head. So now the lawyer just has to know the issue that they're trying to explore and some good keywords for it. And the system does the work of looking in the right source. Right? Now you might think, well, that's kind of giving over control. It's saying the system is going to know where to look. But actually, the feeling of happiness that comes from using this is about knowing that you didn't have to check every little one. You didn't have to look under every rock to find the case. The system did that, so you can feel confident in your answer. You can feel confident that you know what the opposition is going to come up with. So giving that control and that empowerment to the user really did boost their happiness. All right, on the other side of the equation, this is probably my favorite kind of happiness because I don't get to experience it all that often. It's the joy of giving up control. So I like to think about when Centralis celebrated our 10th anniversary and we went to Turks and Caicos for 4 days to an all-inclusive resort where I didn't even have to think about what to do that day or where to have dinner or anything. It's all taken care of. Yay! But when it comes to interfaces, the ironic thing is that sometimes it's the most complicated and arcane subject matter that can lead to this sense of abandon, this joy from relinquishing control. Like doing your taxes, right? So you don't have to become a tax expert to make sure that your refund is going to come as you expect and that you're going to follow the rules and not get audited, because TurboTax takes care of it for you. No tax knowledge needed. We got this, right? So all you have to do is give us your data, and it's all going to be okay. Similarly, payroll services serve this function for small businesses. People who need to make sure, again, more taxes, right? That the payroll taxes are done and that all the deductions are handled and everything. Services like this flourish because they say, we'll take care of that part so you can run your business, right? So it's this joy and happiness that comes out of, I don't have to be an expert in everything. Someone else can manage these things for me so I can focus on the things I more enjoy. All right. So we've looked at 3 dimensions that relate to happiness. And when you line them all up together, you start to see some commonalities of what's going on the left and on the right. So over on the left, it tends to be about control and kind of instrumentalness, getting it done. Focus, moving through quickly, efficiency. These are the things that you want to finish and you want to know that they're done right. Okay? So how would you design for an experience like that? Well, first of all, you need to be transparent. Right? You need to give the user the information they need so that they can get the task done. And using conventions is critical here. They don't want to figure out how on this side. They just want to do. So if you can leverage what they already know and expect about the way that things work, then they're going to be able to do that more easily, and they're going to be happier. And because it's all about empowering them. You want them to have the power so that they can get it done. The other side feels different, feels qualitatively different, right? This is about joy and pleasure and engagement and kind of the being in the moment and being surprised and having the opportunity to discover and learn. So how would you design that kind of an experience? Well, first off, you have to establish trust. Because if someone's going to give over control to you, they better believe that you know what you're doing. Right? So that's critical for interactions where you're saying, we got this. You need to basically meet that threshold so that they believe. You need to also encourage discovery, right? Invite people in, lead them, take them to things that they may not have expected before. So when we look at all of this together, a couple of things to keep in mind. One is we've been talking about, it's not like you can look at this and go, okay, well, I designed product X, and so that whole experience should be about efficiency. Or I design product Y, and that's all about abandon. And it's just not that simple, because there are different moments in the interaction where these different principles can come to play. So when you're shopping, and you want to have an engaging product evaluation experience, that's more about the right side. When you go to checkout, it's more about getting it done. Efficiency, that's the left side. When you're in the museum and you want to expand people's horizons about the content available or the objects, you want to make them think about things in new ways, that's all about novelty. But if they want to find, where to have lunch or the restroom, right, that's about being predictable and efficient. So as you think through what it is that you design, think about each moment in time and what kind of happiness would be most satisfying to the user, and then apply the principles to make sure you get that little piece of it right. The cost of getting this wrong can be pretty high. So for example, we know of a health insurance company that wanted to increase engagement among its members. Okay? They wanted people coming to the site and engaging with it and doing lots of different activities. So as many organizations do, they created a rewards program. So you come to the site, you get rewards points. You get them for logging in, you get them from looking at various things on the site, you get them for going to the doctor, you get them for reading health and wellness articles. Doesn't sound so crazy, right? I mean, maybe not the most compelling thing, but it doesn't seem wacky. But users found this really problematic because a lot of users of these health insurance sites were chronically ill. So they're going on the site to check a claim. They want to make sure their claim was handled properly. They're going to the doctor not because they're trying to be proactive about their health, but because they're sick. So to be rewarded for that, to have that gamified for them, just felt wrong. It got this emotional equation backwards. And as a result, it made people actually quite unhappy. So I'm happy to say that that concept was not pursued. Other things about getting this right. Let's see. Oh, I want to make sure that, if you feel like your product is more over on the efficiency side here, that doesn't mean life has to be boring and dull and there can be no joy in your product. I recently went through a lengthy evaluation project just for my own purposes for a to-do application, like an app that tracked my to-dos, right? Very busy winter, crazy busy this winter, needed some help in keeping everything organized. And I found this great app called Todoist. I don't know if any of you use it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a super light and friendly design, but also very powerful. And I put all of my tasks in there, including like recurring tasks that kind of happen every day. And there was this great day. This doesn't happen often, but I finished all my tasks. And I checked off the last task. And when I did, you know, it crossed it out like it does, and it went away. And then the whole screen became a big check mark. And it said, "No more tasks today. Enjoy your evening." I was like, oh, thank you. It was fabulous. It was such a great moment of joy. You know, it was unexpected. It was novel, right? It didn't interfere with what I was trying to do. I was still able to check off the item. But it was a nice little piece of levity, little piece of happiness injected into what you might think is a more mundane interaction. By contrast, there's another to-do app called GQs, you know, Q like a line in the UK, that is very powerful and has other great features. But in this particular interaction, I felt like they got it wrong. Because, again, I was checking off my items, and one of my items every day is to do my time card. Yay. And when I complete a time card, it's always on the next day, too, Monday through Friday. And I checked off time card, and the message on the screen was, "New task generated." Because what it does is it makes the next day's task. Like, thanks. Yeah, really appreciate that. Insult to injury. So there's an example of a moment that probably nobody, who worked on this even thought about. Like, it's what the system is doing. You complete it one day, it makes the recurrence for the next day. But, it's just not very fun. So there's an opportunity there to fix that and make that happyometer go up. Yeah. So always keeping that happyometer in mind. So those little moments can shift it up or down and can really have an impact on your, the frequency of the positive affect in your world, which is a key component of your happiness. Because when that doesn't happen, when that happyometer kind of slips down, yeah, it's not good. Yeah, so there's nothing like a usability problem to kill your mood, right? If you're moving along and you think something's working and all of a sudden you get an error or there's some misunderstanding, then your mood just crashes. So again, great power and great responsibility. We can design these experiences to make people happy, but at minimum, we have to make sure we do no harm, right? Because the cost is really high. All right, so just to recap our definition here, of course, we're looking to create more happy experiences, fewer unhappy experiences, and then there's this overall life satisfaction component, and we haven't really talked much about that. Studies have looked at that when people think broadly about their lives and look back on the things that, that they've done. What do they attribute their happiness to, and what are the kind of common themes in happier people? And things like that tend to include being grateful for what you have rather than focusing on what you don't have. It's things like having strong family and friendship relationships, close connections with other people. It's things like having a sense of community service and feeling like you're giving back. And then overall, it's about feeling like you're part of something bigger than yourself. Okay? Now, can we design for these feelings? Probably. Haven't spent too much time thinking about that yet, but hey, we're designers. As long as we can define the problem, we can look for solutions, right? But what I want to leave you all with is the thought that if we get these little interactions right, if we get happy with a little h right, then we open the possibility for people to engage in these sorts of things more often, right? They're not run down by the day-to-day of their lives. They're uplifted by it. So they have the brain space and the opportunity to think about the things that might ultimately bring them bigger happiness. So what a great mission we have. What a great opportunity. We can make the world a happier place. We just do it one interaction at a time.